Welcome to Dialogues with Creators. Our guest today comes to me recommended by not one, not two, but three people. Linda Gambill has written The Geography of Desire, a Memoir of West Africa. It will be available from Apprentice House Press of Baltimore, Maryland on June 16th. On this episode, we talk about her experience in Africa, why she wrote her memoir and the process, and we'll talk about the means to her journey in the Gambia, the Peace Corps. Stay with us. Welcome to Dialogues with Creators, Linda Gambill.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Well, as I'll say later, it was actually a triple threat in a way to how you got on here. So I want to start by saying that you live in the Chattanooga area, right?
Yeah, I do. I live on Signal Mountain.
Okay. And from reading your memoir, you are an East Tennessee native?
Yes. I grew up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So kind of east of Oak Ridge is part of the Manhattan Project. So it was in the South, but it was basically a military installation that became a city to help build the bomb. And people came from all over the world to live there. So it was a strange little community. It didn't grow up organically as a Southern town. It was plopped down in 1942 by the military. And the project was to refine the uranium that went into the bomb that exploded Hiroshima.
Oh, wow. But you lived there after that time, of course, obviously.
Right.
My parents, that was before your time. But have you ever thought about writing significantly about growing up in that kind of environment?
I have thought about, well, it was actually when I was growing up, it was very peaceful. And, my dad, he did not work in weapons. So it was kind of history to me. But I have thought about writing a novel about the war, like Oak Ridge set during the war, because I was reading a little bit about it and I realized it was such a pressure cooker. There were all these people coming in from all over the country. And what interests me about it was really a chance for young women to leave home, which is kind of the theme of mine, I guess. I mean, I've only written one book, but that's what it's about. It's about a young woman leaving home. So they needed workers for the war effort and they were paying really well. So a lot of people upped and moved to Oak Ridge. And among those people were a lot of young women. And, up until that time, I think young women didn't really, a few went to college, but a lot of them, they went from their parents' home to marriage. Mm-hmm. So it was a really interesting time of housing shortages. And it was secret. Oak Ridge is called the secret city because except for a few people, nobody knew what was going on there. So a lot of these people showed up to work there and they didn't know what they were working on.
That sounds fascinating.
Until the bomb fell on Hiroshima. Right. And then they knew. Some people were like, oh my God. And some people were extremely happy because they knew it was going to be the end of the war.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a lot of stories there. Interesting. And
and it's a matter of like researching it and finding the stories and then fictionalizing things based on. There was a man actually who was, when he found out, somehow he found out what was happening before the bomb fell. And he was running around town saying he had to go warn the Japanese. Oh. So they locked him up. They put him in basically under psychiatric care and locked him up. I don't know where they locked him up, but they locked him up in a house somewhere. I didn't let him out until after the war was over. And I thought, that guy's got to be in my book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That's fascinating. There are so many untold stories about that time, and we can go off on that. But I will come back to your book that you are publishing now. I'd like you to start by telling us as much as you would like to about the season of your life that you focus on in your memoir. And let me say that I've read it. It's beautifully written. It's a page turner.
Thank you for that.
I don't know if you wrote it to be a page turner, but it was. And so congratulations. It's always great when a book comes out, especially when I guess this is your first, right?
It is.
So we're going to talk some more about that. But So if you just like to tell us what your book is about, as they say.
Well, it's about, it's based on my experience because it's a memoir, but I did try to write it like a novel. I used a lot of, techniques of fiction. Um, so it was 1978 and I was living in Knoxville, Tennessee, and in a little bungalow. I had two roommates, a couple. They were a couple. And I was really stuck in my life. And I had this crush on a former professor. I was kind of obsessed with him, actually. And he would kind of drop me crumbs now and then. And yeah, come circling back around and then go off and live his life. And I was also kind of stuck after my parents' divorce, which had happened, let's see, about 7 years earlier. But it was an unusual, I don't know if it was unusual. It was a situation in which my mother, after the divorce, became extremely emotionally distant from my sister and me. So we didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to make of it. And I later, as I was actually toward the end of writing this memoir, I came across a term that called ambiguous loss. And it was invented by a woman named Pauline Boss, Boss. And she was a sociologist who had studied, or maybe a social worker, I forget, but she had studied families who had family members who had gone missing in war. So the families didn't know if their soldier was still alive and captive somewhere or if he had died.
Yeah.
So she came up with this term, ambiguous loss. It was really hard for families to move on because their son or husband or whoever it was, he was physically absent, but still emotionally present in their lives. And she went on to realize ambiguous loss can work the other way. You can have somebody who's physically present, but emotionally absent. And that's what my mother was for a variety of reasons. But that's her story. So when a person experiences an ambiguous loss, it's really hard to move on. You're just stuck in this not being able to resolve your grief, or should you be grieving? My mom, she was here, but she wasn't the same. So it was like a death, but not a death. So it was very complicated. And only, I came across this term a few years ago, and only then did I really realize that I could really put a name on it. So anyway, I was stuck. I was working at the state psychiatric hospital, which wasn't a terrible job. It was interesting, but it wasn't really going to go anywhere. I would be doing the same thing for years and years if I stayed. And I was smoking marijuana every night, which wasn't great. And I had this professor thing, situationship, I think they call it now, going on. It just wasn't moving. And I was kept waiting for something to happen. And it never did. And then one night he showed up at my little bungalow where I was living on the outskirts of Knoxville after a big fight with his girlfriend. I hadn't seen him in a while. And he wanted to spend the night there. And I was like, that's when my eyes started to open up. It was kind of like I was standing outside of myself looking at my life going, oh, this isn't good. I've got to do something. I showed him the couch and a sequence of events happened that are in the opening chapter of the book. And I realized I had to get away and I had to get far away. This guy, I didn't know how to at that age, I didn't know how to make really tight boundaries and get him out of my life while staying in Knoxville. And I had always wanted to join the Peace Corps since I was 14, and it'd been 10 years and I hadn't done it. And I just thought now's the time. If I don't do it now, I'll end up going back to go to grad school or something, and I'll probably never do it. So that day I made the phone call and asked them to send me an application. And that was the beginning of, it took about 9 months between applying and actually leaving to go to Africa. So that was how I left. I just realized I needed to do something really drastic. I needed to get away from my parents just to get some distance, to get perspective, and just to cut it off with this guy who he didn't really want to have a relationship with me, but he wouldn't leave me alone. So
he comes across as a real loser. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess he was a professional professor. But yeah, in his emotional life,
yeah,
I think, yeah.
it's interesting to me because we were, as I was a college professor, and so we were always told, do not have relationships with your students. But it happens, and it's like,
I know. This guy was actually living with one of his former students while he was still married to his wife.
oh my, okay.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I've noted that
All kinds of red flags, but I ignored them because I was young and I just thought it was fate and destiny.
Yeah.
And whenever you think it's fate or destiny, watch out.
Okay. Good advice. So at that point, then you go to the Gambia, which I wanted to ask, is there a reason they call it the Gambia as opposed to just Gambia?
Yeah, it's a very small country.
Uh-huh.
And it's basically, it's on if you imagine the hump of West Africa, the big curve,
Right.
it's in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's surrounded by another country called Senegal.
Right.
And it was carved up by the colonial powers. It probably all had been one country, but the English controlled the Gambia River, which is the Gambia was named after the river. So the Gambia is basically just the river. It's one of the big, I think it's 4 big rivers of Africa, and its banks. It's like 15 miles to the north, 15 miles to the south. So it's kind of like the Gambia River.
Right. So it's named after the area and the river. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go there and you spend 2 years and then you sign up for another year towards the end. Yeah. So, but then there's some other things that happen, which we won't give away all the drama, of course, because we have to leave spoilers alone. But it gets very intense and exciting towards the end.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I tried to map it out. I didn't want it to sag, because when you're writing a novel, and in my case, a memoir, I wanted it to have an arc, an emotional arc.
Right.
So I worked really hard on that, both learning about it formally and then trying to plug things in. But I didn't rearrange things. It was really weird because when I was there, even as events were unfolding or as they unfolded, I realized this is like unfolding like a story. I couldn't have made it up, Yeah. It was uncanny. So I just figured one day I would write about it. I didn't know it would take me so long to start or to finish. But so thank you for that. I did want it to be a page turner, which, so I'm glad that you said that because I'm glad you found that to be the case.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into the plot because that would kind of like why bother, but but yeah. Now, I mentioned in the introduction that 3 people recommended you to be on the podcast. One of them is your colleague with Apprentice House Publishers, Margaret Roblier, or Peggy Roblier. And she was on the podcast back in January because I heard her speak at the Writers Guild in Chattanooga. And I said, oh, she'd be perfect. I'm always looking for people for the podcast. It's like if I have a conversation with you, you might end up on the podcast. And so I want to put in a plug for Apprentice House. I think they're an interesting publisher. They're affiliated with Loyola University of Maryland. I'm a Marylander too, like Peggy is.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up there. In fact, I'm working on some memoir myself, and I'm looking at pictures of back home. And it's in Baltimore. And they have a major that's a training program for students going into the publishing industry. So they publish books from the university and Apprentice House. And the other person was, interestingly, a colleague of mine from my teaching experience, which ended after 47 years last May. Incredibly. Yeah, I did it a long time. And she approached me at a friend's retirement party because she, and I won't say her name because I don't have her permission, but she had been in the Peace Corps herself, and she's affiliated with the group that meets in Chattanooga. And I did not know that she had been in the Peace Corps. I don't really know her that well, just, kind of talk to her. We were in different departments. And so she said, I've got somebody for your podcast. And she said, because I was in the Peace Corps, and I said, oh, it's Linda Gambill. And she said, yes. I said, yeah.
I met her at a party.
Right. I said, she's already on. She's going to be on next week. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then I was contacted by the person who was helping you with your book launch as well. So I got 3 recommendations. So that was kind of fortuitous. After I talked to Peggy, I wanted to get in touch with you, but I think I didn't get your email address. So it just ended up being now instead. But this is closer to your book launch anyway.
Yes. But also,
So you can consider that my transition to the next 2 areas of our discussion. The first is going to be about memoir writing. And so how did you find out about Apprentice House?
I don't remember, but it was probably on a list. There's three big lists of agents and publishers. One is Publishers Marketplace,
Yes.
and that's like the big master list. And that's, I think, more for agents. There's Duotrope, Duotrope, for any listeners who are, looking for publishers. And then there's Poets and Writers Magazine. They maintain a lot of information about the market. There's probably others, but those were the 3 that I was really using. So I imagine it was on one of those. And then I had applied. I had tried to get an agent, and it's very hard to get an agent, as I found out. So after that failed, I said, well, okay, plan B, I'm going to start querying university presses and small independent presses. I didn't want to self-publish or hybrid publish because I didn't want to pay thousands of dollars to do that. And I wanted I guess the infrastructure of a publisher. So once I started applying to the independent presses and the university presses, I started getting requests for the manuscript. And Apprentice House was the first publisher that wanted to publish it. So I took it, and I'm glad I did. They've been great. Students are great. They work really hard. They have other classes, but they go through training and acquisitions and development and design and production, promotion and marketing. I think there's also an introductory class for just to kind of help them see if it's something they want to pursue. And so, yeah, it's been great. And the program director, there's a guy there who keeps it all together. And it was a very good experience for me.
Right. It's a very innovative kind of thing they do up there. I was at the Association for Writers and Writing Programs conference at Baltimore. Were you?
Oh, really? I was there too.
Oh, that's funny. I could have met you there. Well, the thing was, Peggy was there too, but we couldn't get together. We kept crossing in the night, and she had trouble with her hotel and la-di-da.
Yeah,
So we never did get together. But I went over to their booth and talked with them, and I sort of thought maybe they were Maryland focused because of Peggy, but they're not. So that was my mistake. I just thought that maybe. So memoir is often confused with autobiography, which it is not. How would you explain memoir to somebody who's like, what's that? Or, oh, you could tell your life story, huh?
Oh, gosh, no. Memoir is just a piece of your life. So in my case, it's 3 years. There's a little bit before I leave, but that's not much. 3 years, and then there's the last part is when I go back in 1997 for a visit, which was basically 3 weeks. So with a memoir, I think you're trying to investigate a certain period of your life that's different from anything that went before or after. It's a more intense period for whatever reason. People write memoirs about all kinds of things, but for me, it was about a quest for becoming a self. And by that, I mean being able to be myself, even when there was pressure from other people to be different. So those years in the Gambia, I arrived as a very confused and lonely and lost person. And I promptly, I had all these visions of how I was going to reinvent myself. And I promptly melted down and I was dissociating. I was depressed. I was anxious. And in writing the memoir, I wanted to go back to that time and understand. I did understand. I did come to understand while I was still there what was going on and to climb out of it and adapt and have relationships, learn the language, have all kinds of adventures. But in writing the memoir, there were still some things I hadn't quite integrated. So I wanted it to go back and examine it more closely, not like psychoanalysis or anything like that, but just in writing, how many pages I've written to get it down to 97,000 words. As you write, you just get a different perspective on things. And then I have a writers group with three other people, and then they give feedback. They'll be asking questions like, well, that's not clear, or what do you mean by that? Or here you're sounding kind of like sorry for yourself, or like you have an agenda, like you're trying to like settle a score or something like that, which you don't want to do in memoir. You don't want to sound petty, or you don't want to be settling scores on the page. You don't want to be coming across as a helpless victim. In most cases, there are some cases people write memoirs in which they were helpless victims. And that wasn't the case for me. So I didn't want to portray myself that way, but sometimes you just slip into it. As you start seeing yourself doing that and taking all that stuff out, trying to see a situation from someone else's point of view, how they might have been seeing you, you just get a fuller understanding of that period of your life. Whereas, like you said, an autobiography is your whole life from your birth and on until your present day of writing. Which if I were to try to write that, a lot of it would be pretty boring, to tell the truth. It's just life. Going to school, going to work, having a fight with my husband, it's just like life. But Gambia, my time there was very intense and dramatic. And so I thought it was a good story and I wanted to understand it better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really so much a part of the memoir experience is you have to have a lot of deep, dealing with things and being honest with yourself, which I think you are in this book. And not that my opinion matters. You know better than I.
Readers' opinions do matter.
Yeah. I felt
the reader if the reader senses you're not being honest, you're going to lose them.
Yeah. No, I felt you.
Point in memoir.
Yeah. So, how is this memoir different from what might be considered other Peace Corps memoirs? And I confess, I have not read any other Peace Corps memoirs. But
I haven't read every Peace Corps memoir out there. When I first started writing this book, it was a novel, and I got 3/4 of the way through, and I realized I don't know what I just felt like something was wrong. And I didn't know what. And so my writing group, two of the people in my writing group had worked with mentors at the writer's studio in New York City. So I decided, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I got this mentor who was amazing. Her name is Andre Lockwood. I don't think she teaches there anymore, but she was just incredible. And she read my manuscript and she said, well, it's not working. I said, I know. And what she said was my biography, my real life was getting in the way of fictionalizing it.
Oh.
And so I had never read a memoir in my life at that point. She said, either you need to, change the character, fictionalize her more, make her different from you so your imagination can take flight, or you need to make it a memoir. And I'm like, oh, what's a memoir? I've heard of them, but I'd never read any.
Yeah.
So she gave me, I think she started me out with Mary Carr's book, The Liars Club, which is anybody who wants to write memoir should read that book. It is amazing. And I went, oh, and so she gave me some more stuff to read, and I thought about it, and I realized it needs to be a memoir. So basically, I had to learn what a memoir was and start over. And so in part of that, I did read a lot of Peace Corps memoirs that, were out at that time, which was, around 2000, early aughts. So I'd read a lot then, and I haven't read any since. So I can't speak for all Peace Corps memoirs, but the ones that I've skimmed, recent ones I've skimmed, or the ones that I read then, they tended to have there's one called The Village of Waiting, which is an excellent memoir. It's written by George Packer, who writes for the New Yorker, I think. He writes political books. He became a journalist, and his memoir, his style is very journalistic. So he doesn't really include a whole lot about himself, his own personal drama, what's going on in his head. So I enjoyed his memoir, but it was different from mine. Mine, I have some journalistic things in there. I mean, I did a lot of research because there were things about the Gambia I was curious about that I couldn't find out when I was actually living there because there wasn't much that had been written. And what little there wasn't accessible to me because I did not have the internet or anything at that time. And then other people will write or wrote memoirs that were kind of almost like cultural anthropology, like studying the culture and the people and the habits. And there might be some of their own personal stuff, but not much. And I just wanted to write, well, I just felt like my experience was so dramatic and intense. And it wasn't just me. There were other volunteers that I was friends with. Have their own dramas. And I'm like, nobody's writing about this stuff. Peace Corps is not all kumbaya. You just go over there because you want to help and you want to serve. That's part of it, but it's not the whole story.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell more of the, the personal part. There's a external drama of events, and then there's the internal drama of yourself in those events. And so I think that's the big difference. And that being said, there might be some out there now that do that. But there's a lot out there, so I couldn't possibly read them all.
So from what you've said, you started writing or starting to try to write about your experience there in fiction or whatever. And, it's been like 25 years. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, pretty or less, maybe 22, 23. Yeah, and when I went to the writer's studio, I remember it was 2009.
Okay.
So in 2009, that's when I started over writing it and rewriting it as a memoir. I used some of the stuff I had written as a novel, like descriptions of the village, things like that. I was able to use. It got revised, but I basically started it over in 2009, and I worked with Andre for 4 years. It was over the telephone. It was a one-on-one.
Yeah,
I'd send her pages, she'd read them, and then. She was great because she always told me what was working. So I knew when I was on the right track, and then she would tell me what wasn't working. So I learned a lot from her.
So what about the Geography of Desire, do you believe will appeal to readers? This is your market pitch here.
It's my shamelessly flogging my book. Well, I liked what you said, so I'll go with that. If you were a reader, it's dramatic, it's intense, it's a page turner. It's a okay, so to be more specific, a lot of young people, when you're young, you have the same challenges. You're trying to figure out two main things. Mm-hmm. This is what Freud said: meaningful work and love, relationship. And some people also have a spiritual element thrown in there. But so those can be challenging and, emotional times when you're trying to sort all that out. So when I went to the Gambia, I had the same challenges that all 20-somethings have, but they were intensified because of this ambiguous loss and unresolved grief.
Yeah.
They were intensified by the fact that I was in a foreign country, thousands of miles away from home, and I was determined not to quit.
Yeah.
I just felt like if I quit this has been my dream for so long, my life will be over, basically. I just thought that would be it. That would be it. So that made me stay, which I'm glad it did. But it wasn't really intense because of the foreign setting and the isolation in the village until I learned the language and acclimated, and people acclimated to me too. I was the first volunteer there and first white person living among them. So in the beginning, there was a lot of, people, I was really on every time I left my hut. I was on. Yeah. People were looking at me, watching everything. And then after a while, they got used to me and it wasn't something, there she is again. But so I think people will like that. And hopefully my honesty and trying to figure myself out, I hope that would come across and encourage people to do the same with their own lives. And learning about a place that most people have never heard of. The Gambia is, the people there are so amazing. And when I first got the motivation to write the memoir, it wasn't to tell my story. It was more like other Peace Corps memoirs. I was wanting to tell about the people there because there were some amazing people that, just funny and warm and smart and challenging in the way that was good, like just destroying any stereotype I might have had. And so I wanted people to get to know them and realize that people in Africa, they're not just statistics about the latest disaster. They're actually people that living their lives and having sense of humor. And, so I would hope that readers would find that interesting. But Andre at the Writer Studio told me, you can't just write about the people. In memoir, it's not about Africa. It's about you in Africa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
People have to know whose eyes they're seeing Africa through. So if you're not there, they don't know whose lenses they're looking through. They need to know that because, if you went to Africa and wrote a memoir, it would be different because your, experiences are different and you would see it differently.
Well, one thing I would say is that, and I hope I say this right, you would write about things and I would read about them and I'd say, oh my, didn't they know certain health practices? I'll just leave it at that. Especially one in particular, but yeah, we don't want to talk about that here. It's too emotionally difficult, but, and hygiene and things like that. And I would think, didn't they know any better? But you were not, there was never a sense in the book that you were icky about it. I'm sorry. I don't know how to say it any better. You were like culturally appropriate, I guess. It's like, I'm sure there were times when you had a certain reaction, but it didn't come off that way.
I didn't spew it out to them for sure.
Yeah.
Outwardly. Yeah, I did. So yeah, when I was in Peace Corps training, we had three months of training before we go to our village for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
I remember the woman who taught us health and nutrition said, y'all, it's really, you don't realize how ignorant they are about their bodies. And why wouldn't they be? Because they didn't have a Western school there. I mean, there was a lot they didn't know. There was a lot they did know too. And it wasn't like they were hygienic. I mean, it wasn't like they were the villagers. They were devout Muslims, and
Right.
cleanliness is very important in Islam. People bathe every night. And it's kind of hard to stay clean though when it's 110 degrees.
Yes.
And you're sweating all the time. But we were taught, like the practice you're talking about was FGM. And I could never accept that. Of course, it was horrifying and terrible. But we were told in training, you can't just bring that up when you're giving a health lesson at the health center.
Right.
You cannot bring that up. That is, you'll be shunned if you do. Now, things have changed a lot since then. It is talked about now.
Mm-hmm.
But so I did not bring that up except with one person toward the end of the book.
Yeah. So as far as the biggest question inherent in your book, what I'm hearing you say is that it's how someone, you, experiences this new and very different culture and how you grow personally from it. Would that be the biggest question, you think?
Yeah. Because you have to be flexible when you go to live in a culture that's really different from yours.
Yeah.
And I'm talking really different. I'm not talking like, oh, let's go to live in Paris,
Right.
That's different.
It's quite different.
It's still a Western culture. So let's say you go to live in a non-Western culture as a Westerner, then you have to be flexible in all kinds of ways that you don't have to be in your own culture. And you have to be patient because I would just tell myself, I learned to tell myself, I don't know the whole story. And then I would try to, it wasn't my language got better. I could talk to people. And there were people there who were happy to explain it to me and to point out my own biases. There was one fellow in particular who we became very good friends. And he was a shopkeeper, very witty, very smart, liked to challenge people, me in particular. And he was very happy to point out when I had certain gaps in knowledge or biases that I wasn't aware of. So he was great.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to move on and in our last section about the Peace Corps a little bit, but I did want to ask one more question about if somebody says to you, and they're honest, it's in good faith. They're not just being one of those people that says, I could write a book.
Uh-huh.
If I had time. No, you couldn't. If they would say, I would like to write a memoir because of my experience and blah, 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 what would you say to them?
Okay, you have to, you cut out there for a minute.
Oh, if somebody came up to you in good faith and said, and you knew they had something to say, and they say, I would like to write a memoir about this aspect of my life or portion, what would your advice be to them?
Read a lot of memoirs.
Okay.
Read good memoirs. Read, Mary Carr. And I haven't been reading memoirs recently, but Wild by Cheryl Strayed, obviously. Everybody mentions The Glass Castle by Jeanette Wald. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you need to read memoir, see how other people do it. Hopefully you can become a member of a writing group. I know that the Chattanooga Writers Guild has they have various subgroups, and I think they have a memoir writing group.
Yeah, they do now.
Mm-hmm. Read books about writing memoir. There are two in particular I would recommend. One is The Art of Memoir by Mary Carr.
Yes.
Karr.
Yes.
And the other one is a book not as well known, I don't think. It's called The Situation and the Story. And it's by Vivian Gornick, Gornick. And in her book, she talks about, this is so important. What is the situation and what is the story? So this piece I just read is abridged. There's stuff that happens in it I didn't want to give away, just in walking across the field that made me include this in the book. There was a turning point in the relationship between my boyfriend and me, come to that walk. So I would say the situation was we were walking across the field with gunfire all around us and we were scared. And it was, a dramatic scene and all that. But what did it mean? Why was it important? It has to be more than just a vignette. And that's the story. What was the story? The story was what transpired between my boyfriend and me as we walked across the field, which I didn't want to give away. So I cut that part out. But I just wanted readers to get a flavor of how I write. But so the situation in the story is invaluable. And it does take a while. I mean, a lot of people want to write, they'll write really interesting vignettes. This happened and they'll write it well, but it's like, so what? What did it mean? What did it mean to you? What did it mean to your life? What did it mean to other people in your life? So that was a hard part, like, sorting out what's the real story behind this. So I had, at one point, my manuscript was 156,000 words, and I got whittled, I know, at 95, 96, something like that now. And I was going through it and realizing, well, this was an interesting vignette, but there's nothing really, it didn't really shift me in any meaningful way other than that was interesting. So all that stuff got cut.
Yeah.
If you can afford it, I would recommend getting a good teacher. You don't have to go get an MFA to become a good writer, but there's a lot of good teachers. I'd recommend the Writer's Studio. It's online now. You don't have to live in New York. I didn't have to live in New York then. Andre and I talked on the phone every few weeks. So yeah, I think those are the main things. The last thing is, it's related to the situation in the story, is you have to figure out who your narrator is. This was one of the hardest things for me to learn. Andre kept banging into my head, you need to have the older, wiser narrator, looking back on those events from when you were young. So the reader doesn't feel like it's just you in your 20s thrashing about, in Africa. You want to have the older narrator, that's me now, looking back on it and bringing the experience and wisdom of an older person on that younger self that I was. And I call her Owl, older, wiser Linda.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, I was putting stuff in even at the last minute, even after the Apprentice House took the manuscript. I was still looking for places to put that in. It has to be a really conscious decision to do that. So that's related to the situation in the story, because the story really is kind of what the older, wiser narrator is trying to get to.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You said your first was 167,000 words, you said?
159.
159. Yeah. My first novel was about 160,000 words.
Wow. And how was it when by the time?
It was less than 100. So
Yeah.
you got it.
Yeah, most publishers freak out. It's, oh, yes, mate. That story's like, no, they want something under 100.
Yeah, people. It's going to sell. It's going to sell more. It just is. I mean, I'm usually less likely to pick up something that's going to be, take me big for only.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, I have the book, The Goldfinch, but it's like 800 pages.
Yeah.
I just want to read something that's that long. Give me a break.
Finished listening to The Loneliness of, Sonny and Sonia by Kiran Desai. And I listened to it. I didn't read it. It's a monster too, but I really enjoyed it. It was read really well, and it was such a good story. I think you have to be a really master writer to pull off a book that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to finish just with a few questions about the Peace Corps. When my former colleague approached me the other night, my first response was surprise that she had been a Peace Corps volunteer. And secondly, and I hate to say this, that it was still in operation. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it, though. The Peace Corps was, you and I are about the same age, I think. It was a pretty big deal when I was young in the 60s and 70s. But, and we said, this is an option, if you're college, go do this, et cetera. But one does not hear about it nowadays, even though it's still active and it's large. So how do you respond to people like me who are so ignorant?
Well, I can understand. I think it has to do with the splintering of media. I mean, back when we were coming up, Peace Corps had ads on TV and we were all watching same 3 channels.
Right.
And they had these great ads at the toughest job you'll ever love. And that was their original jingo. So now we have the splintering of media and so many channels and they're on social media, basically. But yeah, you just don't hear about it in the same way. Like, you don't hear about anything in the same way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
People get their news from so many sources. But it's still alive and well, and I really was relieved that our president didn't see fit to axe it. Like, USAID is.
Yeah, and that is interesting.
But the Peace Corps is, it's very active, and there's 3,000 volunteers overseas in 60 different countries right now.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you'd wanted to do it since you were 14. What was the attraction about it?
It might have been an ad, or it might have been, I don't know how I found out, but back when Peace Corps was young, it's now like 65 years old.
Yeah.
You would go to Outward Bound in North Carolina to train.
Uh-huh.
And I heard that they had to, the trainees had to rappel down a dam. And that sounded very scary and very thrilling. And I thought to myself, wow, who would I be if I could do that? That's not something anybody's going to ask me to do in my normal life here in East Tennessee, although now rock climbers do it all the time. But I don't know, it captured my imagination. And then when I was 12 years old, my family had lived in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Really?
Yeah. And I went to this girls' school and made friends with these 2 girls. They were sisters. And they invited me to go on vacation with them. Their father owned 2 ranches or estancias. So they took me on vacation with them to these estancias. And I was just fascinated. It was so different. We were in Patagonia and it's cattle ranch, basically. It was beautiful. We rode horses every day. Fortunately, I knew how to ride a horse. It was such an adventure. And I think it just kind of got me curious about different parts of the world. I just knew it would challenge me in ways that staying home never would. But it took me a long time to get up the courage. It was kind of scary.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. Will they send you someplace without regard to your preferences, or will they send you where you kind of want to go?
When I applied, the way it was all done by mail, they would send you a sheet that would describe a country and describe a job. And you could say yes or no. And but after a while, if you kept saying no, I think they would probably drop you, thinking you're being too picky. Well, the third one I got was the Gambia, and I took that one because I wanted to go to Africa.
Yeah.
The first two were other places. Now the application process is completely different. You go online and you can look through the job openings and you apply for a particular place and a particular job. And there might be a lot of other people applying. You just can go to peacecorps.gov and, see what's out there.
Okay.
Then if you get accepted, it's still have to have a medical clearance, mental health clearance, and a legal clearance. And I'm telling you, those things are exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah.
It isn't just a little token thing. A lot of people get booted out because of, one or another of those things.
Right.
It's usually medical or mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about legal, but yeah. So, and the Peace Corps has more flexible options now. You can apply for the traditional service, which is 2 years. You don't have to be a college graduate, but you have to be 18 and you have to have I think a lot of people who go to community college and have really specific skills would be amazing volunteers. I had a liberal arts degree, so I became a health educator and it was pretty general kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't have a college degree, you shouldn't feel like you want to go, you shouldn't feel like you shouldn't apply.
Yeah.
And then for professionals, they have shorter services that you do need a college degree and you need several years of work experience. And those are like 6 months to a year, I think. And then there's also online stuff you can do.
And it's not just, I think we always thought it was for younger people, but they're letting more older people now.
So in my group, we arrived there in 1979. Most of us were in our 20s.
Yeah.
There was one woman who was in her early 40s and one woman who was in her early 70s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She was an RN and she was a tough lady. Yeah. She was really great. So, no, Peace Corps always encouraged people of all ages to apply.
Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe now more older people are applying. I don't know. People retire and think, hey, I've always wanted to do that.
Do this.
Maybe I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So have you been, in 1997 you went back. Have you been back to Gambia since 1997?
No, I haven't. Well, I was really lucky when I went back in 97 that all of the people I loved and cared about, my close friends,
Still there.
were all living.
Yeah.
And they were all in relatively good health. And that's the way I want to remember it.
Okay. Yeah. So to finish up, you're getting through this one, and I know this is a horrible question, but do you have any further writing projects planned, or you can take it easy and sell this one foot wash?
I'm going to work on getting the word out about this and kind of resting and taking a break for a little while. But
you need to.
I do have the idea of the writing a novel set in Oak Ridge during the war.
Yeah, we met.
And I would probably want to do it from the point of view of somebody who has no idea what's going on, because I don't understand the science. I don't want to write about the science of the bomb and the technology and all that. But I have to do more research, So I'll see where it takes me. But I have some characters sketched out, I have a plot sketched out. Did it a long time ago. So at some point I'll pull that out of my files and look at it again and see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your advice and your wisdom and your and sharing your story. It's funny because you mentioned Mary Carr, and I read her book about memoir, but I haven't read her book of memoir, which is like,
she's written 3.
Let me go to Thrift Books and buy that. Yeah.
Cherry, and then she wrote another one called Lit.
Yeah. And I want to thank you for Linda Gambill, the author of The Geography of Desire, a Memoir of West Africa, for talking with me today. Again, her book is coming out June 16th, and it's available for pre-sale right now, correct?
Yes, on Amazon and all the other usual places.
All the usual suspects.
Bookshop.org, yeah.
Yeah. And I can say I've read it and found it unputdownable, as they say. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being on today, Linda.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great having a chance to talk to you and talk about my book and writing in general.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much.
Good. Okay. Well, best regards, and we hope the book sells really well.
Thank you, Barbara.
That always adds to it. Bye-bye.
Yeah.